You probably know that water is pretty important. You must drink it in some form every day, or else you wouldn't be alive to watch this YouTube video right now. But you're probably unaware of just how influential water has been on the history of human civilization. Without water, you'll die in a few days. The exact length of time you can survive without water varies, depending on things like the temperature and what you eat. 60% of your body weight is water, and 70% of the earth is water. It could not be more essential to human life and society. However, its importance is masked by how easy it is to get. Unless you're buying some special water that comes in a huge bottle and has some dumb name like Veraciclear, water is very cheap. You can even get water for free. Sometimes it just falls from the sky. In that sense, it's closer to oxygen than food, two other things you can't do without for very long. Water is inexpensive, despite being so incredibly useful because it is abundant and easy to find. The so-called diamond water paradox deals with the strange reality that diamonds which are useless are way more expensive than water, which you need if you don't want to die. You can go to your kitchen sink and get water right now. There's plenty of it around. But if you want a diamond, you're going to have to get it from a company who in turn has to get it from a mining operation in Africa. This all helps to hide water's crucial role in the history of human society. If water cost as much as gasoline, people would probably think about it a lot more than they do now. Throughout history, civilizations have come and gone. This is not always the most fun realization, especially if you planned on the civilization you currently live in lasting indefinitely. Nevertheless, civilizations have a tendency to slowly phase out or even disappear rather abruptly. In many cases, this was due to their relationship to the most precious resource of all, water. The Indus Valley Civilization, which was located in what is today Pakistan and India, revolved around the Indus River and its tributaries. This civilization came into existence sometime around 2600 BC. Despite being on the historical stage some 4,600 years ago, archaeologists have realized that these people had very efficient ways of managing their water resources. For the Bronze Age, it was an advanced civilization. They didn't have hypersonic jets or gummy worms, but you have to grade these people on a curve. The people who lived there, known now as the Harappans, built public baths, drinking water infrastructure, water storage facilities, and even a sewage network system. But water also may have played a role in their eventual demise. Historians and archaeologists believe that a change in the course of the Indus River may have been one of the biggest factors that led to the decline of this ancient civilization. It is also likely that they were hit with a severe drought caused by a change in the climate. The water system that the Harappans relied upon was fed by rain, and that rain came in large part via monsoons. When the Indus Valley climate started to get significantly colder and drier, monsoons became weaker and less frequent. The area became arid, and agriculture became difficult without the regular floods that they used for irrigation. It wasn't as though this caused everyone to just suddenly drop dead and all their buildings to burst into flames. Collapse usually isn't that exciting, despite what Mad Max would have you believe. The water supply of the Indus Valley was slowly reduced to the point where the population was forced to scatter eastward. Their civilization simply wasn't flexible enough to deal with a change this big. Harappans needed the monsoons to create summer floods because they did not have sophisticated enough irrigation capabilities. As the monsoons kept shifting, the floods became too erratic to sustain agriculture. The Harappans migrated towards the Ganges Basin instead, where they set up smaller villages and more isolated farms. These small communities didn't produce enough surplus to establish trade, and so the major cities died out. The Akkad civilization in modern-day Iraq, which dates back to the 3rd millennium BC, suffered a similar fate. The Akkad are considered to be the forerunners of the Sumerians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians. They lived along the Tigris and the Euphrates River, which they used to create huge agricultural systems. These agricultural systems resulted in one of the highest recorded population densities anywhere in the world at that time. Southern Iraq was so fertile that you could yield 30 grains for 1 grain sown. That's even more productive than modern-day grain yields, which have the benefit of modern farming technology. They may have had great crop yields, but their civilization was destined to be a short-lived one. A prolonged drought caused the rivers they relied on so much to experience a sudden drop in water level. Their relatively primitive farming methods also led to progressive salinization of the soil. They were unknowingly salting their own fields. Their trade with other societies fell apart, cattle starved, and ultimately, most of the population was forced to migrate to places where there was more readily available water. The water that had once supported their existence had turned against them. Archaeologists have suggested that the same climatic change that hit Akkad was also responsible for a major shift in the water situation of the entire Middle East region. It paralleled the collapse of the so-called Old Kingdom in Egypt. The Nile River was Egypt's main water source and sustained their civilization for 3,000 years. But a devastating drought hit ancient Egypt, and it sunk into a dark age that lasted for over 1,000 years. This drought and the ensuing famine were documented by the Egyptians themselves, and only recently were scientists able to confirm what they documented firsthand. The importance of water, as well as general environmental conditions, has often been overlooked in how people tell the story of human history. It is only relatively recently that people have started to look back at past civilizations and try to understand how their relationship with water impacted their growth and death. Areas such as modern-day Iran and South America were home to flourishing ancient civilizations, in part because they had adequate rainfall and hydrology that was conducive to agriculture. Other areas, like Australia, never progressed much in terms of technology and complexity due to harsh environmental conditions and a general lack of water in most areas. If you live somewhere in the West, you probably don't worry about water too much at all. You may think that water problems are something that would really only be possible in the distant past. But unfortunately, this is not the case. It's very possible that in the future, water will once again play a major role in some of the countries that used to be home to these long-dead civilizations. India, for instance, has long had problems with water scarcity. It is an ongoing issue that affects hundreds of millions of people. India has just 4% of the world's freshwater resources, but it has 17% of the world's population. This general lack of accessibility is made worse by the fact that certain rivers and reservoirs dry up in the summer before the monsoons. This water crisis has gotten even worse in recent years due to climate change, which has delayed the monsoons. It doesn't help that India also lacks proper water infrastructure and suffers from unchecked water pollution as well. In neighboring Pakistan, similarly water-based problems persist. Disparities in water distribution between Pakistan's Sindh and Punjab provinces could lead to serious internal fighting in the near future. Water security has been an essential part of civilization since the dawn of time. The power of modern irrigation technology and infrastructure just helped us all forget this. The importance of water got heavily downplayed in modern history, but dwindling freshwater supplies, climate change, and a rising human population have forced people to start taking water into account once again. Water can no longer be ignored when it comes to thinking about future development and risk analysis. Water could very well prove to be a key factor in future conflicts, strategies, and political alliances. Just like the need for oil produce organizations like OPEC, the need for fresh water may form the highly influential organizations of the near future. Countries without adequate water resources will find themselves at a major disadvantage in the tricky game of geopolitics. Their problems will most likely not just be international, but domestic. Water is increasingly becoming a major problem in the western United States, for instance, with interstate agreements made over a century ago proving to not be adequate for the modern-day situation. In humanity's distant past, there were civilizations who considered water to be so important that they actually viewed it as sacred. Such were the opinions on water in the Indus Valley, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. It played a central role in their cultural rites and rituals. Today, climatologists and environmentalists are emphasizing the importance of water once again. Water is just as necessary for society as it is for the human body. If water is not managed and preserved effectively, modern civilization will go the way of the Harappans and the Akkadians sooner rather than later. For more videos on the most amazing forgotten parts of our history, be sure to subscribe to the Intrigued Mind channel, like the video, and leave your suggestions in the comments below.